Welcome in, Minnesota sports fans, to another edition of Vikings on SI, right here on the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by Will Ragatz and Joe Nelson. Guys, the Vikings are one of 5 undefeated teams after 3 weeks, and there's been a lot of talk and a lot of media bandwagon jumping onto the Vikings bandwagon, because why not after 3 weeks and what they've been able to do. But the question and kind of topic I want to get started off on is, we've seen what they've been able to do through 3 weeks. We've talked about it and the belief factor and what it'll take for a lot of people to start believing in Sam Darnold and these Minnesota Vikings. And it seems that a lot of people are starting to come around to it. But the question I have is, this doesn't really feel fluky. Like, it doesn't feel like you're waiting for the bottom to drop out. Like, maybe there's a little bit on Sam Darnold where you're still waiting, and that's understandable after his previous 7 years in the NFL. But for the most part, it feels like this is what we've seen over the first 3 weeks. This is the real Minnesota Vikings that we're going to get for the rest of the season. Am I wrong in that, Will?
I don't think so. I agree with you that you still want to see a little more on Sam Darnold, who last year was a backup quarterback and now is suddenly leading the NFL in touchdown passes and drawing all the early MVP buzz. And you just want to see a little more to be sure that this is something that can continue all year, because I think Darnold deserves a ton of credit. I think Kevin O'Connell deserves a ton of credit for what they've been able to do so far. But we saw, Kevin O'Connell prop up the Josh Dobbs thing for a while last year. And I think Darnold is far better than Dobbs, just pure arm talent and obviously draft pedigree, things like that. But you want to be sure that this thing can continue. And another thing, Bill Belichick said today, I believe, that he wants to see the Vikings play from behind a little bit. And I think there's some fairness to that, because I just looked it up and they've trailed for 3 minutes and 26 seconds all year. And that was after CJ Ham's fumble let the Giants go up 3-0 in the opener. So it's been a lot of kind of positive game script, and the Vikings have controlled the game with their defense and running the ball and all these things. But I say all that to say, I really do think that this is not some fluke where the Vikings are going to fall off and really regress. Like, this team is very good. They are deep. They are talented. They are extremely well coached. It just comes down to if they're going to remain like legitimate Super Bowl contenders and not just be a good like 10-7 wildcard team, it's got to be Darnold continuing this level of play. And guess what? It'll help when he gets Jordan Addison and TJ Hockenson back at some point.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a ton to add to that, because it's pretty much based on fact and logic, right? Like, everything about this team looks strong. It's 3 weeks. You've played 2 Super Bowl contenders and you've taken care of business. I think obviously you got to do it on the road against a contender, and that's the opportunity that's in front of the Vikings this week against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. But, if you want to feel, even more optimistic than Vikings fans already are, you can look back to last season, and after 3 weeks of play, there was only one eventual division winner who wasn't in first or second place in their division, and that was Tampa Bay. So Tampa Bay came on strong. They beat the Vikings in the opener, came on strong late, and won the South. But every other division, the team that was in first or second place after 3 weeks went on to win their respective divisions. So that bodes really well for what the Vikings are doing right now. And obviously it's 1 year, it's a sample size, and I didn't go back and look at every single season who won their division after 3 weeks of play and where they sat after 3 weeks of play. But there's absolutely nothing about this team that says they're gonna drop back. Darnold, I think, doing what he did against the 49ers and putting that knife in and turning it late in the game to set up Will the Thrill for the field goal to go up by 10 points late, that I think was the equivalent of having to play from behind in a way, because the Vikings had their backs against the wall. The 49ers were charging. Aaron Jones fumbled at the goal line. That could have gone south. And every other year in Vikings history, it would have gone south. But for some reason, it didn't. And that's why there's a different narrative around this team after 3 weeks. That was a great example of what they can do when the pressure is on.
For sure. You mentioned there, Will, wanting to see this team play from behind. Bill Belichick said that as well. And some of these other things that we want to see. What are those check boxes that are still left unchecked that we went into the season wanting to see from this team before we're willing to believe and buy into this team fully? What are some of those boxes that still remain unchecked for you, if there are any?
There aren't a lot, and Joe just had a good point on the playing from behind thing. Yeah, that was a big boy drive where they needed it, and where all the momentum and pressure was swinging in the other way, and they stepped up and delivered it. And so that box, at least for a one drive sample, was checked, and it's something we want to continue to see more and more of. But from like a roster perspective, I don't have a ton of question marks still. I mean, like I said, they're going to get Addison and Hawkinson back. Jalen Naylor has absolutely been everything I thought he could be watching him in training camp as a number 3 receiver who can step in and be the number 2 if needed. I mean, my questions were like with the defensive tackle room, and I think like that's been solid. Harrison Phillips is a good player. Jerry Tillery's been solid. They've gotten some production from like the Jonah Williams, and even Jalen Redmond had a sack last week. And I had questions about the cornerback room, and that has been really, really good. I think if there's one weak link on the defense, it's been Byron Murphy Jr., who has dropped an interception in each of the last 2 weeks, and it has given up some yards. He always seems to be kind of in pretty good position, but a good throw has been able to beat him, and that's happened a few times over the last couple of weeks. But really, like you're just nitpicking there when you're talking about a solid starting nickel in Byron Murphy. I think Stephon Gilmore and Shaq Griffin have really hit the ground running and have been quite solid. So I don't know how many more boxes I have that aren't checked. The run game with Aaron Jones has been kind of an emphatic strong point so far, even if it's been a little up and down. But I don't know. There isn't a whole lot that I still need to see to believe in this team. It's just a question of, can they do it week in, week out, over and over and over again, and continue to stack these performances? And with the roster that they have, and especially with the 2 coaches that they have leading it all, I just tend to think they can. So I don't know. I'm starting to think Joe's 12-5 feels kind of reasonable here with the rest
Feels
of
a
the way.
little light, doesn't it?
I don't know if I'm there yet. That's 9-5 the rest of the way. I mean, that feels like maybe the over-under, if anything.
12.
Yeah, maybe 11.5 would be the new. And that's probably not what Vegas would give it, because I don't think they would still believe. But at least for me, that might be where I'd set the line.
Yeah, and I would pick the over 100% of the time. It's interesting. But like you see how much the Vikings are confusing everybody on defense. And Emmanuel Acho had a really good segment on ESPN with James Jones and LaShawn McCoy. And he pointed out how the Vikings lined up in what everybody on planet Earth who's played football before, whether you're young or experienced, thought would be man-to-man. And then they dropped back into a cover 2 zone. But not only that, but the safeties were playing corner, and the corners were playing safety. So they totally disguised it. They're moving around unlike teams do. It's so different. And I would think that it's almost impossible to predict what the Vikings are going to be doing on defense on any given snap until the ball is actually hiked. That's phenomenal, and that puts insane pressure on any quarterback of any level. I think it might be easier for the Vikings to do that while they're playing with a lead, and maybe that's why Belichick's like, we got to see what these guys can do, not just on offense when they're playing from behind, but on defense. Can they be as cryptic? You know what I mean? So maybe that's what Belichick is getting at, but I don't look at any.
Can they stop the run? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't look at any of the quarterbacks, upcoming. Like Jordan Love, if he plays on Sunday, he's not going to be 100%. That's what Ian Rappaport is saying this morning. You get Jared Goff, who's not exactly mobile. Aaron Rodgers isn't mobile. These guys are going to have to be quick decision makers, and the Vikings are going to have to miss tackles if they're playing with a lead for any team to have a shot to come back against them. That's the way I look at it. And according to PFF, the Vikings are, I think, the 6th or 7th best tackling team in the NFL so far this season. Literally everything is going right.
Yeah, I'm sticking with the kind of the summarization or the narrative that I've said the last couple of weeks, which is this is a top 5 defense in the NFL that is going to have them in every single game they play this year. Maybe there will be 1 or 2 duds sprinkled in. I struggle to see who that would happen against on their schedule. And like you said, Joe, it's the diversity and the complexity of what Flores does, where every player on the field knows the defense from more than one position. Like I mean, Josh Metellus knows like 6 of them, but every defensive lineman and outside linebacker, they know each other's positions. They've got their middle linebackers knowing the safety roles and the outside linebacker roles and the safeties in the corner. Like, there's so much interchangeability there, and just so many things they can do to disguise and drop and confuse offenses and create chaos. Like, they're going to be in every game. It just will come down to the offense being the ceiling raiser. And so far, I haven't seen a whole lot to be concerned with on offense. We maybe have to still have the Ed Ingram conversation a little bit, but they really like what he does. They like what he does in the run game, and they think that to some extent at least makes up for the occasional rough reps in pass protection. So I think that this train is going to keep rolling. And spoiler for our video later this week, I'm probably going to pick them to go to Lambeau and win, because they haven't given me any reason not to pick them yet. And Jordan Love being less than 100%, I think is certainly a point in the Vikings' favor.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty strong prediction for later in this week, which we'll get to on Friday. We'll make our predictions coming up in our Friday video. Quick roundup of other Vikings topics. I don't think we have this one written, but Sam Darnold, number 21 in the latest Ringer QB ranking, up from 29, so he's above the quarterbacks. It feels like he should be above. Do we think 21 is about the right spot for Sam Darnold?
That's still too low. I mean, I think NFL.com had one last week where he was 15. I think that's obviously it depends on how much you weight these 3 games versus how much you weight the previous 6-7 years of his career. But I mean, it should really be what you're seeing on the field this season. So I think 15 has to be the floor, and you could argue for him being like 12 or 13.
If it's based on this season, he's top 5. I mean,
that's true. If it is solely based on
it really is. I mean, 8 touchdowns, 68% completions, 2 interceptions. One of them really wasn't even his fault. I mean, the guy's played really well. You watch Kirk Cousins on was it Monday night against the Chiefs? Sunday night, whatever it was. Kirk Cousins. I mean, it just what would the Vikings record be if Kirk Cousins was the quarterback this season? I don't think they beat San Francisco. And then the Houston game, you probably still win that one, but I don't think you beat San Francisco. How many times has Darnold been able to just use enough of his mobility to get away from a sack or to run for a first down or just extend a play an extra half a second and then throw the ball either away or to someone for a completion? Whereas Kirk, you see him, he's got 10 yards of green grass in front of him, and he starts to charge forward, and he gets tripped and sacked, right? Like, there's just no escapability with Kirk Cousins. That part of Darnold's game has gone overlooked, and he's been under a lot of pressure this season. I think 40% of his dropbacks, he's been under pressure. That's a lot. He's one of the most pressured quarterbacks in the NFL to start the season, and he's still putting up those numbers. So I don't know how many quarterbacks deserve a higher honor than him so far this season. That's why on Sunday, Will, you're writing the story, Sam Darnold for MVP. Colin Cowherd and all these guys are talking about it. I don't care what Cowherd thinks, but the fact of the matter is Darnold is playing at a level in a league without many great quarterbacks as one of the best quarterbacks. Forget about his history. Like Kevin O'Connell says, let's focus on the now.
So you, to be clear, would not trade, contracts aside, keep the team the same, Darnold for Kirk Cousins right now?
Oh, my God.
For the rest of the season? No,
God, no. Do you know how many stones Kirk Cousins has left in his jar of death being outside of his house?
Jeez.
We did the math, and I think he's dropped like 72 stones since he signed with the Vikings. It's 1 per month. I did my own calculation. My algorithm takes another 6 stones out because of the Achilles. So he's very susceptible to pain. No, I'm taking the 27-year-old former 3rd overall pick all day long. There's no way.
I think it's still
take Kirk Cousins over Sam Darnold right now.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. I think it's still a debate because I just don't know how much 3 games should weigh against. I mean, coming into this season, there's a reason why Kirk Cousins got $45 million a year and Sam Darnold got less than a quarter of that. Like, I think we can't just completely throw that out. But with that said, the evidence this year has been overwhelming. I mean, the Cousins coming back from the Achilles mobility question. I'm just saying, if it was for 1 year, this year, age doesn't matter, contract doesn't matter, whatever. I mean, I guess age matters in the sense that there's maybe a higher injury risk. It would still be a discussion for me, I think. But I'd probably take Darnold. I don't know.
So let's flip this. Let's flip this. This is fun. Let's go back to 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Darnold is in Carolina. Kirk Cousins is in Minnesota. What happens to Kirk Cousins if he flips places with Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I mean,
he probably throws 20 interceptions, gets sacked 50 times. He probably does.
I don't know that I would go to that extent because he's never been a huge interception guy in whatever context he's played in. But yeah, I mean, he probably doesn't have the same success. Although, I mean, 2021 with Clint Kubiak, the Vikings offense was disgusting, anyways. But
we're talking about throwing the ball to Robbie Anderson and a young DJ Moore, who, yeah, that's nice. But, I mean, come on, man. Nobody could succeed and thrive under those conditions. What about in 2018 or 19 or 20 with the Jets? Kirk Cousins, he may not even be with us. We may be putting flowers at his tombstone. I mean, nobody could win in that situation. Darnold's been typecast as a bad quarterback because of terrible situations. That's bottom line.
Yeah, I do come, again, to just push back a little bit because it's fun. It's like I have the Bryce Young question where does Bryce Young been this bad because the Panthers are a bad situation or because he just stinks? And I after watching Andy Dalton, I tend to think Bryce Young is just a colossal bust. Now, I don't think that is the same case with Sam Darnold because he's proving this year what he's capable of. But it's not always binary like, oh, Darnold was bad because the situation was bad. I think he shares a little bit of blame for how his career went with the Jets and the Panthers. And maybe it's like you give it 20%. But there's still some element of, okay, if you were Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, would you have been able to go into that Jets situation and at least figure it out to some extent that eventually it worked out?
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know.
It's always there's always some accountability, right? Like if I'm in college or I'm in high school and I'm taking a test, but my teacher is awful, how much of that is on me to overcome that? How much is it on me to absolutely dominate this study session and learn about the history of Rome, without good teaching? I mean, their books are out there, right? It's all in front of me. I've got to now make it happen on my own. Mm-hmm. That's a lot to ask, though.
It is, especially in the NFL.
Another topic that I want to get to, we've written a couple articles already over on Vikings on SI about this game this weekend against the Packers. Brian Flores speaking very highly of the offense that Green Bay has. An underrated aspect of this is Green Bay's defense, which seems to have turned things around from what they've done over the past couple seasons, lead the league in turnovers with 9. How big of a test is this for the Vikings offense going up against the Packers defense that looks to be ball hawks and taking away the ball seemingly at will this season, Will?
Yeah, it'll be tough. The Vikings, Kevin O'Connell spoken highly of Jeff Hafley, who's the Packers' new defensive coordinator. He coached with him in his first coaching stop in Cleveland in 2015 and has a lot of respect for what he's been able to do. It's a small sample size, but the Packers defense certainly looks better than some of those Joe Barry units that we saw over the years, and going back to Mike Pettin and whatnot. But they have talent. They've always had talent. It's another tough, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram situation when you're facing Kenny Clark, and Rashawn Gary's a good player, and they've added a lot over the years on the back end. The linebacker, safeties, corners. Jair Alexander is still a very good player, and there's been a little history of trash talk between him and Justin Jefferson. But yeah, this will be a test. I think just as much is it about the Packers kind of ball hawking defense as it is just the environment and going on the road, playing in a tough place to play in Lambeau Field, and the Vikings have had a real home field advantage the last couple of weeks, so they won't have that this week. But I still think the matchup on paper, when you consider that Jordan Love probably isn't going to be 100%, it still seems to just favor the Vikings a little bit, which is why it's interesting to me that they continue to be just slight underdogs in this game.
Yeah, I think a home team generally gets a 3-point cushion, right, no matter what, just for playing at home. So the fact that it's 2.5 to me says this one's maybe more in favor of the Vikings in the money line anyway. But you know what? The Packers' defense, it certainly is solid. I love Rashawn Gary. I love Kenny Clark. Those guys are scary good. They put a ton of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But I think any team that's played Anthony Richardson and Will Levis in back-to-back weeks is probably going to be at the top of the league in turnovers. And let's not forget that Jalen Hurts, I'm looking at the numbers right now, he leads the NFL in turnover-worthy paths plays so far this year with 8. And then I think it's Anthony Richardson's number 2, and Will Levis is right behind him. So they've had some fortune playing some quarterbacks that are not making good decisions, and Darnold's made a lot of good decisions. So whether or not he's seeing ghosts on Sunday at Lambeau Field is going to go a long way in determining how successful the Minnesota offense is. But so far, he has not seen many ghosts.
Yeah, absolutely looking forward to that. We'll come back here tomorrow. We'll have our 5 key matchups tomorrow. We'll talk later today about the Twins right back here on this channel. Be on the lookout for that video. Plenty to discuss there for certain. But boys, it's been good talking to you this morning. We'll talk to you later today and then tomorrow for 5 key matchups. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. It does help us get found, and go read our work over at Vikings, Twins, Timberwolves, Gophers, and Badgers on SI. We'll talk to you later.